Welcome to the UnToxic Boss Podcast, where leadership meets empathy and productivity meets compassion. I am your host, Janine K. Brown. We will dive into the world of effective leadership without toxicity. Get comfortable and learn to stop being a jerk at work. We have another great episode for you. So we've been doing a lot of discussions about what a psychologically safe space is at work and how to create psychological safety for your staff and employees as a leader, and even as a staffer or a manager, what it looks like to receive psychological safety in the workplace. But I'm really excited about today's topic because we're going to be talking about power shifts, like the power dynamics. Have you ever been in a position where you have been the staff or the mentee, and then one day the power shifts and you become the manager or the leader to a former boss? So that's what we're talking about today. Power shifts, leading your former boss with confidence and assurance. So, stepping into leadership is somewhat challenging, and it's even more challenging when you have to start managing someone who once managed you. We'll be talking about the complex dynamics and learn how to navigate power shifts in the workplace and how to do that with confidence, even when you feel like you're not being respected. Our discussion is going to be guided by our guest, Jamila Abston Mayfield, CPA and leader in the financial services industry. And she has over 2 decades of experience. And we're going to bring her on to the show. And she's the leader in the financial services industry, but she's also more than that to me. She is a friend. She's been a mentor to me, even though she's younger than I am, because sometimes your mentees give you some reciprocal mentoring. I think she's a great speaker. She's an author. But y'all, I'm going to let her tell you a little bit more about her. And join me in welcoming to the UnToxic Boss Podcast, Mrs. Jamila Abston Mayfield. Hey, Jamila.
Hello, Janine. I am so excited to be here. You know, I am a loyal and faithful watch and listener of the UnToxic Boss. And like you said, we've been friends forever. And it's just an honor to be on your show. So thank you for the warm welcome.
Jamila, tell the people. Give them what they need.
I'm going to take it way back to Janine. So we're going to start with, I'm from Mobile, Alabama. A lot of people don't know that. And again, the original home of Mardi Gras. I always have to set everybody straight. And I'm proud to be an Alabamian, born and raised. After that, I went to the best HBCU on the planet. Come on, Florida A&M University in Tallahassee, Florida, where I majored in accounting, minored in finance, and Ernst & Young snatched me up. They were recruiting heavy on campus, and I started my public accounting career in Atlanta, Georgia, and it was a wonderful, wonderful fresh start for a career. I went to the University of Virginia to get the rest of my CPA credits because those of us that know, some of us did not have all the ones we needed to sit for the exam. And after that, sat for the exam and became a CPA, made manager, which I felt like was the hallmark of my career at that time, right? And did another year at that level, but decided I wanted to change. Joined the Securities and Exchange Commission, November 2008. We all know what was happening then. So I thought I'd made maybe the worst mistake of my life. This agency, they're in the news every day for Madoff and Stanford and all these things that I've inherited becoming a new joiner. But it was the best time to be there, right? That agency really revamped themselves. They started taking a very risk-based approach to fraud in the financial services industry. I learned a ton. And kind of what we'll talk about today, Janine, got promoted twice in 8 years, which rarely happens at a government agency for those that know how the government works. So that was the best time. I really enjoyed learning. I can't say anything bad about those 8 years. There were also the Obama years and the years where 2 women led the SEC, Mary Jo White and Mary Shapiro. So a real special time. But near the end of my career at the SEC, I started thinking about returning to the Big Four. And I also started getting some, calls from old leaders, my old bosses at the Big Four. What are you doing? How's it going? You still like the SEC? And the transition back was a very interesting one. We may talk a little bit about that on this podcast today, but came back in 2016 and was a partner for 7.5 years. I love that role, leading our wealth and asset management teams, working with our banking and capital markets teams as well to do basically what I did on the opposite end at the SEC, right? So while I was a regulator, at the SEC, I was trying to help people stay out of trouble with the regulator at
Yeah.
EY. So I loved that job. Listen, partner to me is one of my hallmark career accomplishments. I am so happy that I had that experience. And now I'm leading my own firm doing that same thing, risk compliance consulting and professional speaking, which I'm so glad this is one of the platforms I'm launching into this space with. So that's a little bit about me, Janine. I'm a wife, I'm a mom, sister, friend, niece, cousin. I think those are my most important roles, and especially now. 2-year-olds remind you that mommy is the most important role.
I remember when my brother started over with having children, and he said, if you want perspective about life, talk to a child, right?
Oh.
All the things that you think are so important, and all they be like, are you going to play with me today?
Right. Right. I mean, they always prioritize themselves. And it's an interesting dynamic when you've been a leader in a space for so long and you become a follower of a 2-year-old.
We're talking about power shifts. So I think that was a perfect segue into our discussion today. You've had this full circle career, and I was listening to you and you was like, oh, I made manager at EY. And I remember when I made manager in the state and local tax practice at Deloitte, and you was like, I made it, right? It's like this 5-year journey if you start there right out of college. For me, I was an experienced hire, so it took it was a 2-year, almost like a little less than 2 years, and I made manager, and it was like this weird shift, right? This dynamic. But in an organization like public accounting, you work in this hierarchy, right? So it's 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, right? And typically you don't always end up in a situation where you are your boss's boss, right? That may happen later on when you get to the senior manager, director, and definitely in a partner level for people who choose not to go that pathway. But I think in organizations like law firms and professional services firms like a CPA firm, that dynamic doesn't show up for people, that power shift dynamic doesn't show up for people the same way as it does maybe in government and in industry. But correct me if I'm wrong.
I agree with that, Janine. You said it spot on. You start out of college, particularly in these in the industry of Big Four, it doesn't happen until you are maybe a mid to senior level partner, right? Like you're working with people that are more experienced and typically older. But I love that you highlighted your journey and how you joined us. You caught up, and actually you probably leapfrogged a couple of people in the class of your age. So It level set for you, but sometimes experienced hires don't have that experience. They come in at a couple levels below. And I do think they struggle with a little bit of like, I had this experience, 10 years of industry experience. You all aren't respecting me. What's happening here, right? So it's a mixed bag depending on how you come into the Big Four.
So let's talk about that a little bit. So you got experienced hires that these professional service firms are bringing into their organizations because of their expertise, but they trick y'all. Instead of bringing you in as a senior manager, they bring you in as a first-year manager, not even a manager, not even like a third-year manager. And they tell you you're going to get promoted right away. So we done hipped y'all to the game a little bit. But say you, in any organization, say you come in with experience, but you come in at the wrong level. And now you're working for people who may have less insight and experience, like real experience around different transactions or how to different processes, or they're younger in age. What have you seen in your organizations, and how can we help? Because what can end up happening is people think there can be a lot of conflict. Let's talk about that. There can be a significant amount of conflict. So our internal conflict brewing, like they don't know nothing, this young kid, right?
Yes. And unmet expectations. I think when we bring high level industry experts into a Big Four environment at a lower level than, they expect when they see a 27-year-old manager, right, Janine? It becomes this is not what I expected. I think that a lot of times they had expectations they were going to work directly for the partner or with the partners, depending on how experienced they are. And they would not be led by someone that may be their child's age. And I have had some of that feedback. I remember when I started at the firm again as a partner, my admin, who I love to death, my assistant, she was a dear, but she is an Italian grandmother from New York. And I approached her desk and said, "Hi, I'm Jamila. I'm excited to be starting today." She said, I think you're younger than my daughter. How old are you? And just started looking up things about me. And I have a grandchild, and these partners are getting younger and younger each year. And I just remembered Miss Teresa and I are going to have a journey. And we did, right? So I think the same thing happens on the opposite side when our highly experienced industry leaders come in and they say, I'm going to be working for somebody that has 7 years of actual work experience. The best thing to do, though, is to get in there and really try to make friends, build a partnership, and educate them. You have the leg up on the industry. You got history on your side. You can explain how things evolved and then pick up on whatever they have that made them a manager. Sometimes if it's consulting, right, at the Big Four, they had actual sales experience. They may be really good at knowing how to do that. And you may or may not have had that experience depending on what you did in industry. And other times it's they're well networked. Pick on that network. Hey, like, I want you to introduce me to this person, to this person, to that person, but make them feel that there's a mutual benefit despite the age. If more of us like kind of disregard our age kind of biases and just say, listen, they made this person a manager for some reason. So I'm going to figure out how to work for them. I think it would be a tremendous way to kind of blend the generational strain that I know you see, Janine, in what you do every day.
And I think that's a good point. That most people are not aware that there are like 4 and almost 5 generations in the workplace. And let's talk about what those are. And I want to go back to your example too. But first, let's talk about these generations in the workplace. So we still have baby boomers in the workplace. The youngest age of a baby boomer today is 60 years old. So we have 60-year-olds in the workplace. They have institutional knowledge and experience about their industries, about their actual profession, their job duties, right? They have a certain kind of way of working. They have their own belief systems. And then we have the Gen Xers, right? So they're in their late 40s, 47 up to, I think, 55, maybe 58, maybe 59 or something. So you got those folks, and they were trained by the baby boomers. I'm a Gen X, and we are often very similar, right? I consider us somewhat of the gatekeepers of tradition and how things should be. And we were in our, we didn't even have the technology of, we got email technology in college. So for us, we've been in the process of using and constant change in technology and in industry and how we do things. And then we have older millennials. And Jamila, that's you.
Yeah.
That older class of millennials who are over the age of 37, but they're not 50, right? So they're over the age of 37, but not 45 yet. You guys are a separate group, in my opinion, than the other group of millennials. So those millennials who are 35 and under, and maybe some of them are even turning 40, they had technology and they used it. And they were one of our first workplace generations that came in and said, nah, I ain't doing this. And that's exactly how they said it. They were coming in my office telling me, this is too much.
Yes.
Like, you asking me to do too much for this little money. Right. And I'm like,
just said it best. You were right. The older millennials, we were so close to you all, the Gen Xers, that we knew better than to come in with that, right? We still had a little bit of knowledge from you all because you're the keepers of the crown. To your point, you guys are whatever's left from the baby boomers, y'all have it, but you've trained a lot of us. We would never roll in there. The younger millennials, the boldness, the confidence, right? It is it's a shift, right? As we're talking about today in how they communicate.
And I think we learned that, right? In our relationship, serving on a board together where I was the president or chair of that board, you were my second in command as the vice chair and vice president of the board. I can't even remember our titles. It feels like it was so long ago, but it also feels like it was not very long ago. And I remember our power dynamics. But one of the things that I remembered about you, where like this younger group of millennials are a lot more bold and they're going to come in and it's like, we doing this or nah? Y'all were a lot more sophisticated in saying no, right? Y'all use more words. And I remember this conversation you and I had about a process. And you came to me and was like, hey, we could do this. And I was like, nah, it's working this way. We'll just do it like this. And you didn't say anything, right? So there we have this power dynamic, someone who's been around a little bit longer, been in this leadership role longer, a few years older than you. You see, I said a few, a few years older than you, and you didn't say anything. We're going to put a pin in that, and I'm going to come back to that. Our next group of generation in the workplace. So we got these younger millennials. Now we have this new generation coming in called the Generation Z. And there's a bunch of different names for them. So they're probably your interns, your new hires. Some of them are currently in college. And then they're what we might call some of these emerging leaders. So they're staff. They are under the age of 25. And so they're coming in the workplace and they're teaching us all about psychological safety. And what does that mean? And so when the power shift happens in these generations, we got to figure out how to establish authority and respect, which is what I think you were describing earlier. But we also have to get over these communication barriers. And communication barriers work in two ways. So let me go back to the story that I was telling about when we served on the board. I shut that conversation down. It was so automatic because I was like, this is working. We got other problems to solve.
Yeah.
But what happens, what great leaders should do is think about every conversation they have throughout the day, people that they interact with, and be really focused on how do I grow and maximize the capacity and the contributions of others. And when we think about inclusion and psychological safety, there's this one form of psychological safety, and it's called challenger inclusion. And that's what you did to me. But in order for me to bring you along and establish trust with you, I had to come back and say, and I don't know if you remember this, Jamila, I called you the very next morning. I didn't even wait till the next meeting or anything. I called the very next morning. I didn't know if you were going to answer the phone or not. But I said, you know what? I thought about what you said. I shouldn't have shut that down so quickly. If you think it's better to do it this way, we can go from 7 steps to 4 steps. Have your way.
I mean, and I think that the example is so rich because in the same breath, I could have said to you when, you shut me down, I hear you, it is working. I still think it's worth us trying it this way. And if it breaks, let's go back to your way. But that was something that came over time in our relationship because again, I think that older millennial group, we're like, okay, you said it. We're following. We're just more of a, deferent. I think the last deferent generation, right? Like in that way, right? So I could have spoke up, and I think going forward, our relationship got even better. Once you opened the door for me to challenge, and I knew you would at least give me a shot at it. I mean, it got better and better. And to this point, and this is a great example, when it was time for you to leave the presidency, you know how bad I wanted you to just stay in that role. Everybody listening, I did not want to step into the president role behind Janine. Let me just be clear, behind Janine, because she had established such credibility with the accounting, finance, and business community. She knew everybody and they knew her. And they even were like, Janine, what are you doing leaving this to what?
Who's this little girl?
You remember, Janine? But what you did in that power shift was help me succeed. And all leaders don't do that. That's why we want to talk about some of the strategies to do that with definitely a younger leader. But even in that transition piece, when I was scared and fearful and like, this person won't talk to me, and we're not going to name names, right, Janine? But some of them that would not even entertain a call from me because I wasn't presidential to them. You helped them to see. And so thank you for that. And let's talk about some of the ways we did that. And I'll certainly share some of the ways that it went well and not so well, right? In the professional setting.
And that's the other challenge that young leaders have in this power shift. So some of you young leaders who are so dynamic, right? You catch on well, you have the business acumen, you have the executive presence, you show up ready, like more than ready, capable, and you're identified in your organization and you're picked out and say, you know what, you want more, we have more for you. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to move you into these other roles. And so they might not be lateral. They could be horizontal roles and promotions. And so you mentioned, being promoted twice in a governmental agency within 8 years. And I remember meeting your boss and he was like, oh my gosh, her skills have exponentially increased over the last couple of years. But I don't think they ever were prepared for you to be their boss.
I'd agree with that.
What is that like, right? So how do you deal with when the shift, they admire you, they love you, they're building you up. They even take credit for who you've become, but now you're the boss. we'll share with our audience what that was like for you, and what were some of the revelations, like the ahas, or maybe even the hurt that you didn't expect to happen, in some of these dynamics, both in the workplace and maybe even outside the workplace.
It's such a rich question, Janine. One, listen, it was probably one of the best leadership lessons I could have learned in my career, right? Experiencing what happens when people feel their own hurt from my promotion, my success, which in some ways they're related, they're adjacent, but it was no, slight to them and what they had done. And this is so important. You went through all the generational differences, and I'm glad you did, because I do think that's part of it. Well, now my leaders felt like they were old news, and all the things that they had done in the past was it was no longer relevant. And that is not the case. Those things are history that help us move forward. And I had to figure out a way to tap into that with them. Like, you helped build this organization from X years to X years, and I'm just taking it forward with what you've done, not without it. So it's not a like disrespect of what you were doing. We didn't think it was valuable, or the leadership, the senior leadership didn't think it was valuable, but they thought for the next horizon that I might be a good leader to take us forward. So I think the first thing I knew I had to do, Janine, when I got promoted, was to be gracious, right? And, graciousness will take you far. That is being grateful that you have the opportunity to lead and thanking those that help you get there. You talked about some of the things that changed. When I was a young whippersnapper, if I asked for training, if I asked to go speak somewhere, if I asked to go be a leader, it didn't bother people when I was still reporting to them. They were like, oh yeah, let's sign her up. Let her go speak at that X conference. Let her go lead that group. We're not bothered by that. Oh, she's leading in NABA. That's great. Right, Janine? But once I became their boss, it's like, oh, she's getting to go there? Did we have money for that? I didn't think that was in our priorities. So you seem to feel like, oh, now it's not a priority anymore because I have a different title going into these rooms. I'm going into new rooms. So that was one of the things that I had to accept. Man, I've got to get people comfortable with, the fact that I'm the same person and you gave me these opportunities before, and I'm going to still ask for them because that's who I am, right? And I'll bring you along. A little bit of a different approach than maybe, with me going by myself when you didn't think it was a big deal before. I'll tell the younger listeners, all those experiences helped me to get these promotions, right? Going to conferences, AICPA conferences, NABA conferences, networking with professional organizations, the Georgia Society of CPAs, the ACFE. And so while other folks might have just been signing on the dotted line, sure, let her go speak there, go do that, go lead in NABA, it all made me more applicable for those promotions that surprised my bosses. So there's so much to say here, but I wanted to highlight how the change in, oh, she's getting to do that versus they were the ones approving it before, and how at the new title, it meant something more to be speaking to audiences, right?
I think all of that is great, but you know me, Jamila. I need you. My audience wants to know, how did you really deal with the resistance? Because I think there are moments where we're shocked and hurt,
Yes.
and we feel this sense of sadness because we thought they wanted to see us win, and maybe they did. And I think, to your point, when you look at the different generations, people might be thinking, well, I should have been next in line.
Yep.
I've been here, I've done these things. But when it's happening to you, how do you deal with that resistance and rebuild your confidence when you get the comments, right, that you're not ready, or how did you get this, or any other? Because it get kind of toxic when when they see other people winning, when they believe, because I think there's this sense of people believing that you took something from them.
Yes.
That was my job. That was my promotion.
And sometimes it's their own fear of, if she's not working for me, then what am I going to do? And no one wants to admit that. But if you're the second in command, third in command, a lot of times you are doing the heavy lift because you're raising your hand. Let me do that role for the boss. If you remove yourself from being their, VP or second in command, what are they exposed? And so a lot of the negativity was coming from that exposure. What do? I don't have my right hand anymore. And they had to build their own credibility, off their own work, which, Janine, in these day and age, a lot of people have not done the work. So to your point, it was very hurtful. I think I reached out to you and a lot of other mentors, like, what do I do here? Because the other thing is, I liked the professional relationship I had with them. Like, I really liked talking to them, hanging out with them, but all of that changed. But I didn't change, right? I just became their boss, but I continued to do the same things that I did before. I think when it got really bad, though, and one of the things maybe you and a couple of other folks told me to do was just, it's time to set new boundaries. It's just time to go in and lead with your own agenda and establish your exact mandate, because you are now the boss. And I did that, right? I kind of like said, we're going to refresh how we approach building out our exam schedule, if it was the SEC, or we're going to refresh how we approach looking at our client list and how we do research. Some of that is just new strategies, but it also signals that I am in charge. And that helped because it was the entire team that felt it at the same time. Got me some allies in those rooms after those meetings. Like, I'm glad you did. We needed to see you take the leadership seat, take the gavel, instead of trying to ease your way in and still let them, be leading and deferring each time. Well, what do you think about this? Am I on the right track? No, it was time to say, this is the new track. And so I did that I think helped kind of just move things forward. And I know with you and Naba, you were ready for that. You were like, thank goodness, like, yes, move us forward, right? But in the professional setting, again, I'm telling you, people feel like you're saying what they were doing was irrelevant. And so I had to have some backdoor conversations after the new mandate, but it worked, right? Just saying, I need you to support me like I've supported you. What? I need your support.
Oh, girl, it's so good. It's so good. Y'all know I get excited, listeners, and those of you who are live, I get excited when it's, because we got to keep it real. Because you said something. I don't know if everybody heard it. You said that your leaders came back to you and said, we like the way you're handling this, right? You use different words, but that's pretty much what it was. And I think that's what younger leaders have to realize. When you get these promotions and there's a power shift and a power dynamic that shifts, and you're now managing older professionals, you're managing your former bosses, your former friends, your leadership is looking for you to show up, right? Because they put themselves on the line. Their social capital, their professional, and their leadership is also on the line by saying, she's ready, he's ready, let's promote them, and taking this risk to promote you over other people. And so you have to perform. And I think you did that. Oh, Jamila, you, I don't know if did y'all hear that? If you're in the chat and you heard what she said, y'all have to let us know, because, and I want you to think about that, because you don't have it. You have no time. People think, oh, I got 30, 60, 90 days every time I get promoted. No, you don't.
No.
They're promoting you because you are ready. Promotions are based on readiness. And so if you're at the starting line and you're in the blocks, since it's Olympic season, and you're down in the blocks and you're Sha'Carri, you got to get out them blocks, right? You got to get out. And as soon as the gun goes off, you got to leave and go off running. And that's what a promotion is. And that's that power shift dynamic. So I want to sum this up a little bit. So we talked about, like, what do you have to do to build the confidence and earn respect? The first thing, and Jamila said this, show competence and expertise. You got to seek feedback, but act on it. And that feedback needs to be a partnership, right? Because you want to bring those people along and let them know that what they're thinking is valued. And you do that. And by doing that, you're building trust. You got to maintain your professionalism. Never let them see you sweat. And when they make these comments like, girl, how old are you? Or my da-da-da, because that happened to me. I remember when that happened to me. You do not have to tell them how old you are. Don't put your head down. You got to say, you know what? Get right to what you want to talk about. They can figure out how old you are later. So maintaining that professionalism, demonstrating integrity, be open to learning and learning new things, and even just listening differently. I think, that's a big part. And then fostering a collaborative environment, and then recognizing the value of your contributors. Jamila, you said all of that in your story. Anything you want to add to that around building confidence and earning respect?
I love everything you said. Like, one, you summed it up better than I could have, because, when I get to going on these stories, there's so many gems, and I'm remembering how real the emotions were around the stories. Listen, I love that you kind of ended with maintain professionalism. I mean, this is important, right? Because people are going to say things, like you said, Janine, that are going to be hurtful or disrespectful and unprofessional, like commenting on age and sex and race and all that, unprofessional in a way of trying to demean my ability to lead, right? And that's what it is. How old are you? Definitely that continued when I went back to EY as a partner, of course. Coming in at 35 as a partner, like that, you go into rooms and the client doesn't even expect you to be doing anything in a leadership seat.
They don't, no, let's be real clear. You're 35 years old. You're a Black woman. You're what, 5'3"?
Yes.
You're petite. They don't expect for you to be the partner.
No.
Let's be really clear. Not only leaders, they don't expect for you to be the partner. They don't expect for all those people, mostly white men, sitting around the table reporting to you. And there we go with the toxic biases and creating a psychologically unsafe space for women in leadership as a client service professional.
Yes.
And does that knock you off your game a little bit when you first get started?
It does. And, sometimes literally you can tell that they know I'm on the list to speak. This is like a presentation for final orals to win a bid, but they have not looked at titles. Clearly, they just assumed, Brad, Tom, Bill, whoever, and they are waiting. Like, we can start this meeting with me because I'm the lead partner. They are waiting on somebody to get there. And finally, if I speak up, we can begin. Oh, no, we're waiting on Bill. Bill is a manager. Bill, when he joins, he was happy to have him in the room. He'll make a couple of comments, but I am driving the conversation. So to your point, it is a little infuriating at this decade. We're still there. But once you level set, I tell you, Janine, those level setting conversations, they never forget you. So it does speak to, again, maintain professionalism, but be confident. Like, you have to come in here and say, we're not waiting anymore. It's 15 after. He's a manager. I'm leading. Let's get going.
In 2024, we call the level set the clap back. So we got something to say, right?
We do.
And don't you forget it.
It's so important for others in those rooms. If you are at the same level, and certainly if you're more senior, prop up who is leading. If they are a younger person, a woman of color, please make it like, hey, actually, Jamila's the partner, guys. We can get started. Would have been great from a peer in the room, but I didn't get that, right? So just encourage
that allyship. And that's allyship, right? That is a form of showing up as an ally and a champion for people who look like you.
Yes.
Related to people who don't look like you, right? So I think there's this dynamic, and most people, they're so unaware, socially unaware and professionally unaware of the impact of even their compliance in the behavior of others in these sorts of situations. And this is why I tell organizations that you end up losing some amazing talent because it gets exhausting. And I think in a workplace where women, and particularly women of color and men of color, come so highly credentialed.
Oh, we could do an entire different podcast on this, right? Over credentialed, Janine. Do you know how many people weekly that I mentor, I say, don't get another degree, not another one.
I remember when I said it to you, I was like, Jamila, how many letters? You got the CPA. Why do you need the CISA, the CIA, the CFE, but I see it with my clients.
You need to overcome your youth. You need to overcome your Blackness. You need to overcome your womanhood to make sure that they respect you. But to your point, Janine, these are not monikers of respect. We do not need to get them. When you want to get a degree and you have an interest, go for it, right? Like, I absolutely support that. But as a tool that you feel like you got to have in order to exist and be a leader, no, we got to stop that myth because a lot of our counterparts do not have them.
And not only that, I've seen it be used against the professional that has all these credentials to make them seem as if they're unapproachable, they're difficult, they don't know how to relate to others. And so they've taken these tropes of reward and demonstrating I'm smart enough, I deserve to be here, and use them against the professional that has them. And so I see it with my clients. And I also, have seen it as a way for women in particular, because we coach a lot of women in our programs here at Everyday Lead, is that women use them to to even for themselves to make themselves feel good enough. Because there
Yeah.
was a moment somewhere in their life that someone told them they did not belong there. They did not earn a seat there. They've used language around affirmative action, even in college. I had a client, Jamila, who she on the, what is it, the SAT? What do you take for high school?
SAT,
The
ACT.
SAT, it's been so long, y'all. The SAT, she scored in her state in the top 5% of students in the state. A
Goodness.
big state. It ain't Montana, a big state. And was in school, and a white boy told her, because he was a white boy at the time, told her that she was only there because of affirmative action. But
Wow.
she knew she earned her seat there.
Right.
And what that did was create for her the first 10 years of her career, constantly taking certifications.
Trying to disprove that.
Disprove it. When I saw her signature line, oh, this got to be the longest signature line in the world. It was Jane Doe with all of these alphabet, but it did make her feel better.
Right. I think this is so important to talk about because, like you said, at times it becomes the thing that people use to keep you out of the rooms. You have no idea how that can be turned on you. She's overqualified. How many times, Janine, have we heard this? We don't need all of that. And we don't want to have to unconsciously pay for all of that. You just got 3 degrees, a CPA in 2 states. We don't want to deal with all of that. So you never know where, what you're earning and putting on your signature line can go. I just say do it because you truly want the experience, the education, the knowledge, not because you feel like you need to do this to prove something to someone else. I hate that for that young lady, but I know that sentiment.
Oh, yeah. So how do we encourage organizations? So what do organizations need to do, or leaders need to do when they see these power dynamic shifts in their organizations with their teams?
One, and we talked a little bit about this, get behind the leader. Like if you are one that puts a younger leader, someone that doesn't appear maybe to be next in line in the leadership seat, you need to introduce them, roll out that red carpet, drum roll, exhibit pride for having them in that seat, right? They need to know that you really have their back and you're not throwing them to the wolves, which is what a lot of people feel when they don't get that very overt announcement in email. Let's do a town hall announcement, bring this person up. Rah, cheer for them. And then I think what's even more important is, although they're a new, fresh, young leader, give them the space to fail. The same space you would give anybody else. Because what we don't want is them to be hesitant, like I talked about in my description of how I was trying to ease into leadership. We don't want them to be hesitant to take the reins and lead. So give them that permission. We've all messed up. If you fail, we're here. We're failing together. We're in the boat together. Don't go it alone. Talk to these leaders so that they feel like, okay, this is real. I do have to have a coalition behind me, right? And I know I'm going to mess up that quote. Is it Maya Angelou, where I stand as one, but I come as 10,000? I mean, they need to feel that energy. Just hearing the quote gets me excited. So leaders, do not put folks that are perceived as not ready or younger, more junior in these roles without having their back and making everybody know this is my pick. She's got it. He's got it. I'm riding for him. And if you mess with them, you're messing with me. Like that energy, right?
I agree with that 100%. And I think that is where organizations fail. They don't introduce and they don't communicate the reasons behind promotions. They don't share how this person has excelled and what you considered related to their promotion. And I think that should be done for 2 reasons. One, to show that, hey, we got their back and we made an informed decision, but also to let other people know what you're considering when you are promoting people. There's still, for a lot of people, a significant amount of ambiguity on what it takes to be successful in your organization. And I think as an organization, and the human resource department and talent development should be working to make sure that those messages are communicated more than just your picture in a group of other pictures posted on LinkedIn. That ain't enough. I think internally, we need to have more discussions around, hey, we're promoting this 6 people in the finance department, and this is why.
I love it. And we need to be able to say it. Like it should not have to be read or, ask somebody else. They know, their manager knows. We should all know it. And I love your point on internally, like kind of the HR talent team getting together on this, because what people do when they don't get promoted, Janine, they go to that list of responsibilities and duties. They check them all off. They write the date and time they achieved them, don't they? They say, okay, I did this right. I have an example for everything. And they are confused when they try to compare themselves to maybe someone who did. And so this exercise for the leadership and the HR talent group, critical, so that you can sing the praises and be comfortable and confident with who you're putting out there as your new promotes.
Oh, yeah. And there's this culture around, you ain't got to do all of that. But I'm here to tell y'all, sometimes you got to do all of that to get promoted. Yes. You think not coming to the happy hours occasionally, because I was one of those people. I came from a culture where you worked and you went home and you did your thing after 5 o'clock. What you did, we didn't want to know about it, and we weren't doing it with you. To a culture where we worked from 9 to 7 and we did everything together. We ate lunch together. We probably did breakfast together or coffee. We did happy hours. And I was like, I don't need to do that. I got my own friends. And I learned really quickly the value of community in the workplace. And that is really how I was getting promoted and opportunities so often. It's because I was in the mix. I was out there. And it made me better, both internally in the company and externally. So as we wrap up, Jamila, there's somebody listening to our podcast, or they're mentoring someone who is afraid and hesitant to take a leap in their career. They think they don't have enough education. Maybe they don't think they have enough experience, but they have things they want to contribute, and they see jobs that they want to apply for, or they want to have a conversation and tell someone that they want more in the organization. Can you tell them a little bit about how they should approach taking a leap in their career and how they can move forward without being concerned about if they become their friend's boss or maybe even their boss's boss?
Listen, and you kind of hinted at this, we got to debunk the myth that there is only one pathway to promotion. And boy, that has been something that's been hallmarked throughout my career, that there is only one way to do something, that, we don't bring partners in at this level. There's no way you can get promoted that fast at the government. That's a mindset shift internally for whoever's listening. No, if somebody's telling you it can't be done, don't believe them. We see new ways of doing things every day. So you've got to get in your mind, I want this. I may be a non-traditional candidate for it, or I may be coming in a non-traditional way, but it can be mine. So once you get that in your mind, then get a coalition of folks that really believe it with you, right? And Janine, you were there. Not everybody believed it. And I mean, well-meaning people that love me, people that have been leadership for years, but had never seen something, they just couldn't see what I was describing. So you got to move them out of this dream circle and move into the dream circle. Everybody who's like, you know what, let's do it. I'm rocking with you. Here's what you need to think about. So mindset, and get your team behind you. And then it is about doing what you said, Janine. You got to share this. The last thing you want is somebody hearing that you went around them, your boss, you went around trying to get promoted. You talked to certain people, but not everybody. Tell everybody, I'm excited about the next level. I'm a person that's looking forward to leadership. Can you help me? So many times we don't ask for help. It's still like taboo. Why? I don't know, because I've learned the most about asking for help from super senior leaders who do not know it all, but bring the best to the table. Ask for help. Get your boss involved so he or she is not surprised at all. They're like, she was talking about this 6 months in. She was ready for the next thing. So be bold and confident and excited. Share the journey with them. They may not love it, but they know where you are trying to go. And if you sense some roadblocks, I think you need to keep having critical conversations. Like, I'm not trying to take your job in a literal sense, but I am trying to move forward. I want that next opportunity. Can you help me? Can you continue to give me, ways to shine and make them shine? That's the third thing I want to say, Janine. The best way to get promoted is to make your boss look good. And baby, that to me, I try to excel at that. I need this group of leaders to look better than they've ever looked. And while it may not be directly attributed to you, they know. So even when you make that ascension above them, while it may be a little discord, inside, they know what happened. They know you helped build the organization in a way that they were not doing. And, they will adjust. Once you make that ask, once you establish the mandate and say, I need your help again in a different way. And I think back to how hard that was when I was doing it, but how great it is now to have those professional relationships back in a different way, Janine. And I'm really proud that I just kind of pushed through. So y'all listening, mindset, establish your own way, get people bought into. We all know she wants to be promoted. Y'all know she wants to be promoted. Like, get people bought into it. And that way, when you make them shine and that day does come when you leapfrog, they can at least look inside and say, well, she was killing it. She helped me succeed. And it's a new regime.
Ooh, I am going to drop the virtual mic like Barack Obama did, and give y'all a kiss. Peace out, because that was a great wrap up. Jamila, thank you so much for today's conversation. And, for all of you who are here listening, I want y'all to connect with Jamila. She's going to tell you a little bit how to connect with her. But we have some resources for you. So you can look in the show notes, you can look in the chat window. And we want you to come to the Everyday Lead website, download our free resources. We have resources for you that you can use right now for yourself and with your teams on how to create a psychologically safe space related to feedback, even today's conversation, power shifts, branding, everything. We got a great team who's producing some amazing resources for you. Jamila, thank you so much for joining us. And I want to also thank you for being a regular listener to the UnToxic Boss Podcast. Like us, subscribe, and follow us. Our show drops every week on Tuesday. Jamila, tell the folks how they can work with you and how they can stay connected to your brilliance.
Thank you so much for that, Janine. So one, I'm a business person, so I'm going to lead with my LinkedIn. So LinkedIn/n/Jamila Abston Mayfield, full name. Go there, start there. Underneath there, you'll see my business profile as well. So that's LinkedIn/company/Jamila Mayfield Group. Please connect, like, share. I'm always posting things. I've got some events coming up that I'd love to see your face in the place at. And then I'm on Instagram as well. My Instagram is open. You get a little bit more of my family vibe in there, which is super fun. And that is Jamila Abston. So still keeping my maiden name on that one. And Twitter is Jamila Mayfield. So send a LinkedIn message. If you want to send an email, you can send it to Jamila@JamilaMayfieldGroup.com as well. So I'll look forward to hearing from all of you. Janine, like I said, thank you so much for having me on your podcast. I look forward to hearing what the feedback on this and seeing what you're talking about next, because there's so many things happening in this space, and never a dull moment with things that we can talk about around being better leaders.
Well, again, thank you all for joining us here on the UnToxic Boss. Just remember that you can still be confident and have assurance and get the respect you need in the midst of a power shift. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with your network. Follow us on social media for more updates and insights. Together, we can build a workplace where everyone has the opportunity to thrive. We want to introduce you a resource that we know that will impact your life and your career. It's a book, Unstuck and Unstoppable. It is the ultimate guide to overcoming obstacles and achieving your goals. With practical tips and inspiring stories, the book will help you leverage your value, increase your visibility, and gain recognition to accelerate your career. Get your copy anywhere you buy books, either on Amazon or at our website at unstuckandunstoppablebook.com.